Well, hello, Westminster residents. This is Chaplain Dawn, and I'm delighted that you have decided to tune me in yet again for a Chaplain chat time. As I record this message, it is Monday, June 22nd, and I had hoped to give you a change of scenery from my back porch. So I attempted to take you out to Pickett Park to make this video, but the weather didn't cooperate. And a few hours later, I decided just to start all over again here in my home office. So here we are. Welcome. And before we get started with me, hopefully offering a little bit of spiritual encouragement to all of you and just a little bit of the good kind of challenge, I want to offer a very special resident of ours a belated birthday greeting. How about you join me as we sing Happy Birthday? I know you know the words. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Harriet Smith. Happy birthday to you. As many of you may already know, Saturday, June 20th, was Harriet Smith's 100th birthday. Wow, what a milestone that is. In my almost 5 years at Westminster, I've had the blessing of getting to know Harriet a bit, and I have found her to be a woman of great warmth and compassion and intellect and wit and strength, and also deep and abiding faith. Harriet, you have left your mark already on this world in such a good way in the life of your family members and certainly in the life of mine and I know so many others at Westminster. So happy belated birthday, and may you be blessed in the year ahead. In honor of Harriet's 100th birthday, I also did a little Google search on what life was like 100 years ago, and I found out some interesting things. I learned that in 1920, the automobile industry was born. More specifically, the assembly line in Detroit, Michigan by Ford Motor Company, which led to all kinds of manufacturing jobs in this country. That's pretty neat. I also learned that in 1920, if you wanted to be a man or woman of great style, you had to have lots of hats because they were all the rage. And also popular during 1920 was the radio. I read there was over 500 radio stations, and people loved to gather around the radio to listen to news or stories, or even more so, jazz and big band music. And oh yeah, there were lots of dance halls as well, I understand, where people would go and dance to that kind of music. Harriet, I bet you did a lot of dancing in your day. Let's see, I also learned that in February 1920, thank goodness, women received the right to vote. Yay! And last but not least, and perhaps quite ironic, is that in 1920, the world was coming out of one of the worst pandemics ever. Spanish flu, as it was called, infected almost 27% of the world population. So we can only imagine, I can only imagine, what a challenging and difficult time that must have been. And yet, people still endured. The world is still spinning. So I trust they found reason to still celebrate and experience joy and find beauty, just as I hope we are doing as well. Maybe a new kind of beauty, by the way, new gifts. Maybe gifts that are more relevant in the long run. So I think I've been thinking about this a little bit more lately, actually since I began the Three Good Things initiative. Three Good Things was something developed by Duke University as a way to rewire your brain, make it more positive. And it's real simple. It's just for 14 days committing to looking for 3 good things during your day and then writing them down before you go to bed at night and meditating on them for a few moments. I've been doing it longer than 14 days, and I've been noticing that I'm becoming more appreciative of simpler things as time goes on, and finding greater peace in that, and greater ability to let the other things go, which had me thinking about a Bible story that is probably very familiar to many of you, but I have seen it in a new light thanks to a spiritual teacher that I follow, and I want to share that with you now. See if it might encourage you in your journey too. So the story I'm referring to can be found in the book of Exodus and Numbers and Deuteronomy, with different nuances to it. But it centers around a very important man in Scripture by the name of Moses. Moses was called by God to lead God's people, the Israelites, out of bondage in Egypt into freedom in the Promised Land. And Moses would endure so much before that would happen. For 40 years, the Israelites would wander in the desert and almost immediately begin grumbling that they didn't have their choice of food or their choice of drink, grumbling that maybe freedom was more costly than slavery. All the while, God was providing supernaturally for them by making manna fall from the sky and water come from the rocks, in the desert, no less. And only once did Moses take a little too much credit for his participation in that provision, to which we read in Scripture, God seemed to speak some harsh words. At least that's so often how we interpret it. God tells Moses that he will not be the one to lead the people into the Promised Land, for he did not trust in the Holy One. So in truth, I always struggle with that story quite a bit. It just seemed inconsistent with a God of love, that Moses would be treated so harshly with just one misstep, especially knowing how much Moses endured on God's behalf. And I wasn't sure what the story communicated to me either. How perfect do I need to be in my lifetime for me to know a promised land, a place of true freedom and abundance? Until that is, I was challenged to see the story differently. You see, Moses would walk alongside of God for many more years after that and continue to lead the Israelites for many more years after that, before the Promised Land would even be on the horizon. And when the Promised Land is on the horizon for Moses, on the side of that mountain, looking out over it, Moses doesn't argue with God about not being able to enter into the Promised Land. It seems that Moses might have had an epiphany himself, that what mattered most was something very simple and quite profound. Maybe the Promised Land was the presence of God with him all along. So that mentor I mentioned a moment ago, Ruth Haley Barton, envisions it this way in one of her books. She writes, "Clearly something happened to Moses. He was so changed by the journey that he was completely at peace with himself and God. Nothing of this world had any hold on him at all. By this time, Moses and God were like an old married couple who had loved and fought for so long that they had reached a deep level of understanding. They had been through so much together that now it was enough to just sit and rock on the front porch of life, each one content just to know that the other is there. That was all it took to make life good." And so she went on to ponder, could it be that the Promised Land is more personal than we think? Could it be that the Promised Land is less about a physical destination or anything that is outward and more about a way of life and being that enables us to worship and love God fully? And is the land flowing with milk and honey a metaphor for this way of life that is good and satisfying and enables you to be with God and even the circumstance on God's own terms for you? Wow. Well, that's a lot to think about and be challenged by. But I know I will be doing both, because all of my efforts to control the world around me is not yielding much. Yes, we need to do our part to be a light. That's so important. But we also need to be sure and pull up that rocking chair next to God on that front porch of our life and just enjoy being with God, trusting that, as Julian of Norwich said, all will be well, all will be well, all manner of things will be well, for there is a force of love running through this universe that holds us fast and will never let us go. I hope today has been encouraging and, as I said, a little challenging for you. Please know that I am praying for you and for all of us as we journey together. And until I see you again, I'm sending a big air hug. You take care.